Hello, Dr. Rogers, and hello, class. I'm going to be giving you my presentation on designing principles for Hicks Law and Fitts Law. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in the class, and I wouldn't have imagined how much information there is about designing a computer software application. Let us start with some notable quotes. People ignore design that ignores people. This is from Frank Chamorro, for a designer and writer and author of The Shape of Design. So we better design our software and our websites appropriately, or else our users will not be interested in our product. And also in terms of design principles, well, they can be the scientific laws of the usability world, much like the laws of gravity and relativity in the world of physics. This comes from Travis Lowdermilk, our own computer design textbook author. And now we will go into Hicks Law and Fitts Law and learn about their design principles. To give us a brief history of the two laws, both laws were introduced in the Journal of Experimental Psychology. So in 1952, William Edwin Hick conceived Hicks Law with an article entitled On the Rate of Gain of Information. And then in the next year, in 1953, Ray Hyman reintroduced Hicks Law in the article Stimulus Information as a Determinant of Reaction Time. The year after that, in 1954, Paul Morris Fitts conceived Fitts Law in the information capacity of the human motor system in controlling amplitude of movement. It's a good fact that Hicks Law is also known as Hick-Hyman Law, that you'll see later in the presentation. Let's talk about Hicks Law. So Hicks Law is a prescriptive model that's used to determine the time it takes to select an item based on the number of items available to choose from. The more items you include in a menu, the longer the response time is for the user. So it's similar to all the bars that we have on top of our software design applications. With so many options out there, like in Microsoft Office, we want to make sure we find the correct function available. There is a formula, RT equals A plus B log 2n. RT is the response time, A is the total time that is not involved with decision making, B is an empirically derived constant based on the cognitive processing time for each option. So it's about 0.115 seconds typically for humans. N is the number of equally probable alternatives. And now we will talk about Fitts Law. Fitts Law is another prescriptive model that's used to determine the time it takes the user to move the cursor from one location to the target location. The further a user must travel with their cursor, the less accuracy the user will have in reaching the target object. So this is just like typing in the search field in a web page and then clicking search or submit to execute the command. So the formula is MT equals A plus B log 2 times A divided by W. So MT is movement time to a target. A and B are empirical constants. So A would be 0.230 seconds and B would be 0.166 seconds that are typical for humans. A is the amplitude of the movement and W is the width of the targets where the movement must terminate. To learn about some of the similarities, I looked in a peer-reviewed resource, and that was about an experiment with in-vehicle touchscreen human-machine interfaces. I learned that both are highly applicable within the fields of human-computer interaction and human factors. Both laws employed temporal dependent measures and accuracy to address performance rates and limits of a human system. And then both have received substantial support in research that demonstrated their generality and in-process models that explained possible underlying mechanisms. In learning the differences, I looked in another peer-reviewed source about an experiment with standard and non-standard typists. So they were given a test to do a typing exercise on the computer. So for Hicks Law, the Hick-Hyman incorporates degrees of unpredictability and stimuli and considers tasks that contain a cognitive element. For Fitts Law, is immediately applicable to higher familiar and recognizable tasks such as selecting an on-screen icon or typing on a keyboard, and thus captures human performance that is kinesthetic and related to dexterity. In the computer typing activity, Hicks' law is referred to the consistency of completing the action of typing the document accurately. While in that same activity, Fitts' law represents the number of fingers used to type the document and the convenience in predicting the typing speed. Next, let's cover using one law over another. So when is it best? We'll consider using Hicks' law when designing systems that involve decision based on a set of options. For any time-critical tasks that we have, we can minimize the number of options involved in the decision to reduce response times and minimize errors. We can use realistic scenarios when using test designs with complex interactions. And then we can also train the fewest possible responses for a given scenario. We can consider using Fitts' law when designing systems that involve pointing. For controls settings, we'll make sure that controls are near or large, particularly when rapid movement is required and accuracy is important. We'll make controls more distant and smaller when they should not be used frequently, or when they will cause problems if accidentally activated. And we'll also constrain movements when possible to improve performance and reduce error. Let's discover the importance of these laws when designing. So whenever we are creating a software program or website application, we can ask ourselves, how many items should be present in a menu and how should they be organized? Well, with Hicks' law, we can ensure your menu is not overloaded. We can try to put the most frequently used item first in the list. And when we are creating mouse-driven and touch-driven interfaces, we can use Fitts' law and can assist in that our action objects looks appropriate. And the distance and size of these action objects can be achievable to our users by understanding its correlativeness. We can excel in our design and development of websites and mobile applications to become champions in user-centered design principles. In my conclusion, we have the ability to come up with solutions to challenging tasks by exploring Hicks' law and Fitts' law. Our goal is to have high satisfaction with the design principles and techniques in both models for a productive lifestyle. And by gathering feedback and conducting usability studies, we are never finished in our quest for greatness. There'll be always room for improvement. The references used in this presentation are as follows. I used 3 scholarly peer-reviewed article sources and 1 Discover Search ebook source from the Wilmington University online library system, and also our own class book on user-centered design. I'd like to thank the 14 scientific writers that I researched into preparing this presentation I had for you today. Thank you, everyone. Your participating and experiencing my presentation is much appreciated. I would be happy to address any questions at this time. And if you have any questions later, you may send me an email to the email address from Wilmington University provided. Thank you.